G'day again, viewers. In this next tutorial, we're going to talk about setting up the Raildriver. So let's get on to that and do it. Jump into Settings, Controls, Advanced Controls, and you can see that the game has detected that I've got a Raildriver, but it knows it's not calibrated yet. If you try and play without calibrating the Raildriver, all sorts of weird and wonderful things happen. So you definitely need to do this. So let's just go down the bottom and E for calibrate, or you can just press the E key. Okay, first up, we're going to calibrate the reverser. We want to move it to the full reverse position. Now you've got to be really careful to follow the directions. So they're typed here, and it's also got a graphic indicator, a little arrow here showing where it wants the lever to be. And we press accept for each position. Now we're going to move it to the neutral position and press accept. You'll notice I'm taking my hands off every time I set a lever. And that one's done. And now we're going to do the throttle. So we're going to move the throttle. You've got to be careful with the throttle. Move that down to the full throttle position. And then we move it up to the detent. Now, you could, personal preference, move it over into the detent area if you want to. But I find for zero throttle, I want it hard up against that first detent. If you don't know what I'm talking about, let me move the stick. You can see a little plastic detent here. So let's just move that back up. And now, this is where you've got to be careful. Because, you know, you'd naturally assume that you were going to put it here, wouldn't you? Well, no. You actually want to go all the way up, and because you've got the little indicator up here and you're moving it into the full dynamic brake position. All right, now we're going to bring it back again. I'm going to have it till we hit the detent. Now, some people, personal preference, might want to put it in here for dynamic setup. I don't like that. I like it just up against the detent. That's just my personal preference. Do what works for you. Experiment, play. You can always change this and come back and do it again. It's fine. This is the brake lever we're going to do now, so we put that into the release position. And now we're going to put it up against the detent just before emergency. On my Raildriver, it's labelled continuous service. On some, it's labelled handled off. On some, it's full application. It just depends how old your Raildriver is. Mine's 20 years old, so it's a bit different to the current one. All right, now we're going to push it past the detent into emergency and accept that. All good so far. Now, I used to offer a different bit of advice to what I do now. Now, this is the independent brake. I used to suggest move it up a little bit before you calibrate it. I don't suggest that anymore because now this is used for the V-Sol lever for AFB in German trains. That's your cruise control speed selection. And it's also used as the regulator in the steam trains. And it's got some other uses on some other trains. So now that we're doing that, I do have it all the way at the bottom when I calibrate it now. So let's calibrate that, push it over to the bail off position, push it up to the fully applied position, and push it to the fully applied bail off. That position doesn't actually make sense, but it's a Raildriver thing, and we just leave it that way. All right, now we do our switches. That's already in the full left position, so we accept it. Middle position, accept it. Right position, accept it, and return that. Now, next switch, we do it in the left position, accept it, middle, accept it, and the right, and accept it. Now, that means our Raildriver is now calibrated. So how do you use it? Well, if you go and look at a particular locomotive, let's have a look at the Bakerloo 1938 tube stock, you can hover over and see what the various controls on top of the Raildriver actually do. And for the most part, they do what they're labelled to do. And you'll find sometimes this is an independent brake, and sometimes it's something else. That's just okay. So it's important to have a look through the loco that you want to use so you understand how the Raildriver is configured. For the most part, this top platen of controls is fairly consistent across the fleet of locomotives, with the exception of the independent brake that's used for different things on different trains. The buttons down the bottom, however, are not consistent. So I actually don't use them anymore, to be honest. I don't worry about it. I actually use the controls inside the train cab now. But if you like using these buttons, then yeah, go ahead and do it. They're getting better at consistency across countries at least, but the individual trains still often have differences, and that's why I don't use them. The one consistent ones are the left and open, left to open, right to open for the doors. So they're across everything now. They're all the same. So that's all we have to do for our Raildriver. And we can just head back to the home menu now. So I hope this has been helpful for you. If you've got any questions about Raildriver with TSW3, just chuck it in the comments and I'll see what I can do to help you out. All right. If it's been good for you, subscribe. All right. Thanks, guys. See you later.